It's a painful thing to watch a personality change because of addiction. Personalities become twisted and distorted. It doesn't just impact the person using, but everyone around them that loves them. And watching someone that you love self-destructing day after day, it can start to change you as well. Like many people who go into a helping profession, I was initially motivated by pain. I watched someone that I loved choose drugs over everything else in her world. I learned early on how drugs can destroy a life. But when I initially decided to talk about family, I reached out to parents who've lost children to get their perspective. And I asked them, looking back, what would you have wanted to know when you first found out that your child was using? What would have helped you as you watched them struggle with addiction? And what can I tell you now that might help? It's a mix of fear and shame initially. They think it might be their fault. They're afraid of what could happen to their child out there in the world of drugs. They start to fear their own child, who calls them with crisis and drama, dishonesty, threats. For a time, they turn that into resolve to fix the problem, because parents want to protect their child, of course. And then they learn the hard way that you can't control another person's behavior. And then they just worry. They worry they're going to get that call that their child has died, as so many of them have. I've been an addictions counselor for a long time. And I performed many interventions over the years. I've walked a lot of people through the doors of treatment centers all over the country. But I've also heard a lot of family members put off reasons to talk about addiction. I've heard a lot of reasons not to talk about addiction and how it's affected the entire family, as it always does, because it's a family disease. But I have to tell you that things are changing out there now. It's different. Over 1,000 people are going to overdose today. And even with the help of EMTs, rescue workers, and even other drug users, it's likely that about 140 people will die. You have to ask yourself, how bad does it have to get before you change your behavior? Too many people miss or ignore the signs of addiction, and as a result, far too many lives are ruined by it. When it's a powerful drug that has a hold on someone you love, you don't always have the luxury of watching a slow decline and wondering what to do about it. Addiction is progressive, so let's stop being afraid of talking about it. It's not the elephant in the room, it's addiction, and it can be deadly. It falls upon all of us who care for somebody who's on a dangerous path to intervene, whether or not they say yes to treatment or for other help. If for no other reason, that we gave them an option and planted a seed that may eventually take root. You also need to understand that no one is immune to addiction. No matter what you look like, no matter where you're from, no matter what you believe or how nice your house is, addiction can impact you the same way as everybody else. Every part of this country has been impacted by addiction, and some areas are hurt worse than others. Oh, where'd that come from? Right now, we are experiencing an unprecedented surge of heroin across the country. To an addictions counselor, addiction is a disease, but to the cartel, it's a business, and business is good. They're expanding. States like Ohio, West Virginia, Kentucky, all of New England are experiencing relentless distribution of heroin and fentanyl. Fentanyl is 50 times stronger than heroin, and it's deadly even if a small amount is accidentally absorbed through the skin or accidentally inhaled. Overdoses have quadrupled since 2002, and this map represents 47,055 people in 2014. The 2015 map isn't done yet, but it ain't pretty. I would love to dig into this map because the reasons for all of this aren't simple. But this is a whole different lecture. And it's also possibly the reason I don't get invited to parties. But to elaborate a little bit more, the reason for overdoses aren't just heroin adulterants and the varying levels of heroin purity, but the very nature of addiction itself. Addicts, regardless of their drug of choice, will mix drugs, will mix alcohol to get where they want to be because they're chasing something elusive, and they'll do what they got to do to get there. They tend to be a bit careless with their lives, and they have a sense of invincibility. 93% of the people using illicit drugs who meet the criteria for treatment do not believe that they need it. And it's understandable if you recognize that they're putting euphoria directly into their bloodstream. It's almost impossible for them to recognize that there's a problem. So, the good news is that there's a new federal mandate that allows healthcare, law enforcement, and social services to try to keep up with the problem. But I'm sure that's going to save us. But while they do their part, let's do our part. We, as a whole, as family, as friends, have a much greater power to get people to accept the help they need. So what do you know about intervention? Intervention is a process, it's an event, it's anything that alters a person's course of behavior. And it's not just the last thing you do. Intervention can be prior to any use at all. It can be a moment of crisis for the person or a moment of discomfort, and it can be a moment that you create with family and friends. So, prevention. You can start by taking any of your unused medication, lock it up, destroy it, return it. The CDC has a procedure that you can work on. You can take it to the police department, but don't leave it around your house. Make prevention a priority, especially if you have addiction that runs in the family. Listen, nobody is more invested in your kid not using drugs, so don't leave it to a drug awareness day or health class, God forbid, or anything else for that matter. I would really love to talk about this as well, but I don't have time. So being forewarned is really no guarantee that somebody's not going to use. So let's understand what you're dealing with here when we're talking about active addiction. Addiction is a formidable enemy. Not the addict, addiction. Because you have to remember that the person you love is fighting addiction as well, regardless of what it looks like on the outside. I know they look like a human wrecking ball, but they are trying to fight it at moments as well. But the very nature of addiction tells the person that they don't have it, that nothing is wrong. Think about that. What other life-threatening disease lies to the person that has it? It is cunning, baffling, and powerful. People first start using, obviously, because it feels good. But for addicts, they describe the emotional and physical release like the day they met the love of their life. Their descriptions of their first use when they got tipsy at a young age or the first time they used their drug of choice are vivid in detail. But after a while, they use and drink just to feel normal again. The progression of addiction varies from drug to drug, and in that process is tolerance building. In that time, they're using more and more, they're combining drugs, and they may change the way they use the drug. So somebody might move from snorting crushed oxy to shooting it. Their world becomes smaller. They start to believe that everybody uses drugs. It becomes darker. Their world revolves around acquiring enough money to get it, using the drug, sneaking away, feeling the effects, waking up sick, and doing it all over again. It is a miserable existence for the most part, but it can still seem terrifying to let go of it. They do want a way out sometimes. They just don't see it because the drug has the pull that is so powerful. It's more powerful than they are on their own. But you gotta know that deep down they are conflicted at times. Addiction can also look like mental illness, and that's another reason why people are afraid to talk about it. I work a lot with high accountability professionals, and I often get called in when people don't know what's happening with an employee, when they become disruptive or problematic. That's a nice way of putting it. Because there's rarely just one thing going on. People with addiction often have a secondary diagnosis. It's important for a professional to understand the diagnosis, to treat them, but you don't have to. To approach a person you're concerned about, all you have to say is, I don't know what's happening with you, but I can't pretend that I don't recognize that you're unhappy. If you're tired of feeling like this, let's go get an assessment. I'll go with you. There's treatment for all of this, and it's true. Programs like McLean Hospital, the Meadows in Arizona, or Sunspire, they have great dual diagnosis programs. They are more likely to get an assessment for anxiety or depression than they will for addiction because they want relief from the emotional pain. And then you let the person who's doing the assessment convince them to go to treatment. As the coordinator for assessment and admissions at Hazelden Betty Ford, I met with hundreds of families and met with people at various points of readiness for treatment. And this is a point I have been told I drive home a lot, but I'm going to say it again. People only have to be sufficiently tired of living like they're living to make a real change in their lives. And that's true for everybody. Think about it, if you've ever lost weight finally, if you've ever gotten rid of a bad relationship, you just have to be sufficiently tired of it. People don't have to hit rock bottom. They only have to hit their bottom. And we raise that bottom by making the day-to-day life of addiction just an ever-loving hassle. But they can't get there if there's somebody in their life who's making it easier for them to use or drink. You know those stories about somebody who's homeless but still somehow has money to use or drink and overdose over and over again? How do you think they got that money? Anybody? Family. Sometimes grandma. Grandma, jeez. You love her, but darn it, grandma. Yeah, so maybe it's you. Ask yourself, are you helping or are you enabling? You are doing the person a disservice if you don't let them feel the natural consequences of their actions. Let them be uncomfortable. Let them be accountable. I would rather the bottom that someone feel be that of inconvenience and aggravation than something far worse, such as suffering assault when they're passed out, contracting a disease, or something far more brutal. Change the way you think about addiction and clean up your side of the street. You don't dance to addiction's tune. You don't play by its rules, and you don't leave addiction anywhere to turn. Every dollar you give them to pay rent, buy food, or get somewhere is a dollar that they can spend on drugs and alcohol. So, points of intervention are anytime they call and ask for money, have a dramatic incident where they suddenly have, a flat tire. You can make up some crisis, but there's always some wild story about what they need that requires cash and not, you actually paying the bill. You just say, I love you, so I'm going to do things differently. I may have been part of the problem in the past. I'm not going to do it anymore. However, I will help you with treatment. I will help you with detox. And you become a broken record. You set boundaries. You don't become a victim of their abuse anymore. Do you know how many mothers, probably just today, have received threatening phone calls just to get their hands on cash? You have to understand that this is a cycle and it won't end until you say no. You do not want to be the last $50 that created an overdose where someone died. It's a horrible feeling. And I've counseled way too many family members where that's been the case. So, you set your boundaries. And then you accept the outcome. You take care of yourself. You understand certain truths about addiction. You didn't start it, and you can't control it. You love the addict, and you hate the addiction. Helping is offering treatment. Helping is offering encouragement. Enabling is giving them money, is making excuses, is calling in sick for them, is running interference with somebody that they've hurt. Setting limits is the way to protect you and your family from damage done. There is hope here. People do get sober. They get clean every day. They learn to live new lives, and it can happen at any age. Again, you just have to be sufficiently tired of it. For people who don't have family, I can help you there. There's AA, there's NA. For people who have no ability to get treatment, people have been getting clean that way for centuries. For families, there's Families Anonymous, there's Al-Anon, and here in Massachusetts, there's a wonderful program called Learn to Cope, led by an amazing woman named Joanne, who I believe is here today. She started a program because of this very topic. She was looking for help because she was worried about her son, and she couldn't find any help, so she made her own darn program. And I believe they have about 7,000 members of just family members. They offer support in recovery, in loss. Accepting an outcome you don't like is hard, but you never give up. You just always keep on being loving and relentless. Thank you.